dude, I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies, haven't done it from the house yet. Welcome back to the farm on this episode of the farm here at the new pad. We got to break back in. We hadn't done a podcast in probably a month and a half or so.
I know, forever.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Got the two Frenchies in play here at the moment. Cody, I'm just gonna come right out the gate. Let's talk about some NILs.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit about the portal, some NILs. So generally we were having some of this conversation yesterday about, the portal in general. What's kind of your take on, obviously at this time of year, right? You got all the ruffled feathers of there's all these players in the portal and blah, 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 blah. What's your kind of feel? Because the portal, was the portal even available when you were playing?
No, it was like
it definitely wasn't when I was playing.
2 years after me. No. Yeah, 2 years after me, I believe. So I was out of it by then. My last year, because my first senior year, COVID hit, so they gave everybody an extra year, and then the second year after that, they were like, all right, there's some problems with all the extra eligibility, so then they opened up the portal, but I wasn't quite in it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think
you just had COVID seniors.
Yeah, so we had a lot of guys on my team in particular, and girls on the softball team, etc., that were 23 their senior year, 22, 23, because they all came back for a second senior year. So we had a lot of COVID seniors, but I didn't live through like I saw some freshmen that were freshmen my senior year that also got an extra year because of COVID that were playing for what seemed like forever, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're still in college. So I didn't live through that, but I saw it kind of happen where there were some kids that I was like, man, you should have been done 2 years ago, it looks like, but you're still out there playing. But definitely no transfer portal when I was there. So I mean, it's definitely, I didn't live it firsthand, but yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. I think it started off as a Band-Aid to a problem that COVID caused. I mean, it wasn't anybody necessarily fault. They did what I think was the right thing by giving. I know me personally, when we were a month into the season, I think, not even, and then the season got shut down. So it was you gave everybody an opportunity that didn't really get to fulfill their full senior year, another chance to play, right? And so I think it was a good decision to give everybody a chance.
I think also too is also fueled by the NIL stuff, in the sense of because all those court cases came through that you couldn't limit their ability to make money,
right?
Because again, NCAA was, to my knowledge, had for years have been throttling that line of they're not employees. Players are not employees, but then if they're not employees, then how can you restrict them from being employees for anywhere else, or their ability to make money, or their image, name, and likeness? Which is obviously from that as well, then opened up to as well. It's then it kind of branched into how can you restrict them from going from school to school, or affecting, if they're not one of your employees, if you're not one of their employees and they're an individual, how can you restrict them from where they play and, have them all these punishments and all of those things that come along with, transferring? Because at our part, it's not only could you, when I was in college, it was not only could you not just transfer without sitting a year, you had to get released by your coach still, was another big play. And then also on top of that as well was you had to, it had something to do with the grade side of it too, with classes and how you were transferring. You had to have a certain percentage of your major. And I think there is some of those things that are still in there.
Oh, yeah.
But I also get it from there, because I used to think, we've talked about this, but I used to think it was crazy. What are you telling me? Especially nowadays, so you're telling me that there's no other way that I can go make money. And now, because everybody obviously always thinks about the top end Power 4 athletes that are getting paid all this money. But like, there's so many NCAA athletes, and especially too, if you go back to junior college and some of these other that are outside the NCAA, right? That where everybody's always preparing themselves to transfer into the NCAA and what that would look like, and what would make them. They didn't want to compromise their amateur status, right? Where, and I get the reason the NCAA used to restrict you from getting jobs is you would say, let's say you work at a car dealership, right? You work at a car dealership, and when they open up the door to that you can go get jobs. Well, hey, he works at my car dealership, and I'm paying him $500,000. Well, you know, again, in reality, that was just a way for them to pay the players indirectly, and that's like they ran into all those issues. So then they put in there where like, hey, they're just not allowed to have jobs. But it's like, you know, again, for someone like me, or you know, when we were going and playing, like, you know, like I was just trying to pay for my tuition first off, right? And then let alone, you know, cost of living, and you know, we're only getting so much government assistance, and I'm getting out these big loans and doing all these other things. But I always did think it was crazy. It's just like, so you're telling me like I can't, like nowadays, like you wouldn't be able to drive DoorDash, you wouldn't be able to drive Uber on the weekends, or just if you had an extra hour here where I can go make this extra money. There was just all those other restrictions. So I think that you know, I think it was a cascading of like multiple layers of things that kind of all happened. You know, where I mean, obviously too, to get to that point, the game had changed so much, right? They'd put so many regulations in place based on what the schools were doing or holes that were being exploited in the first place. But at the same time, like I've always thought that's the thing. It's like, hey, I understand that you're trying to restrict, but then that's also the other part, right? It's like, should you in the first place be restricting how much money that player can make off of their name, image, and likeness? Like if they are one of the best athletes in the world, first off, in football, you've restricted them where they have to, and I think basketball is the same way, right? Don't they have to go, or they can only get drafted?
To go for 1 year.
Yeah. So it's like you have to go to college so that you can be drafted. It's like, if you just think of that by itself, it's already like a little sketch.
They kind of changed that. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago in basketball. You could technically, which is actually here in Vegas, it kind of blew up. You could go play in the G League for 1 year, or you could go overseas and play professionally for a year. So like LaMelo Ball, if you know Lonzo Ball, that name, he's his youngest brother. He went to Australia and played for a year. Played 1 year professionally in Australia and then got drafted. And then you had like 2 or 3 guys actually that played here in Vegas for the Ignite, the G League team, that played for a year. They didn't go to college and then got drafted. So theirs is a little different. You don't have to go play in the NCAA. But
and obviously, and again, I'm not sure on why this is. I'm just also going to just put the business sense onto the side. Is that like we talked about? It's like college sports is big money. You know, it's massive money for the university. It's massive branding for the university. You know, you have like, again, we talk about like the football stadiums in college are way bigger than NFL stadiums. Also, you probably know more than me on this one. When it comes to schedule, does college play more games than the NFL?
I believe. It just depends on how it goes. Most of them play, I want to say, 14, 15 games, but the NFL also just expanded their season too.
Yeah,
So
which the reason I'm bringing up
17.
football here, right, is like obviously that's the biggest breadwinner, like within all the sports. So it brings in the most amount of money. Obviously, it has the most amount of fans that are coming to the games. Those games are making millions of dollars. TV contracts are really based off of football more than anything because it's the highest viewership. Obviously, there's massive betting that goes on those games as well. So that's huge. You know, there's just big business around all of it, right? So obviously, the other part of that, right, the biggest difference in it, like business-wise, made the most amount of sense is in one of your highest bill, right, of overhead, if you're owning a pro organization, is paying your players. So if I didn't have to pay my players, right, and they're like, oh, well, they're just getting an education, X, Y, and Z. Well, when the colleges were small, that was one thing. But like now, again, they operate as a nonprofit. They're some of the biggest businesses in the United States when it comes to how much money, you know, we actually ran this just off of tuition the other day, right? If like you look at like, you know, University of Alabama, we saw on average that they had about 60,000 students. We said for just the fall, I think.
Yeah, just one semester.
Yeah, just for one semester was like 60,000 students. Or no, hold on. I might have mixed that up. At 60,000 a year.
Tuition.
I don't know how many students it was. I had to, I had to do it.
I just remember the number came out to over $1 billion.
Yeah, it came over. Yeah, 100%. When we did the math, it was like, yeah, they're making billions of dollars, just off of tuition alone, let alone room and board, let alone food, let alone TV contracts, let alone all these. It's big money, right? Is basically the point that we were making from there, right? As we started doing some of the math. And then obviously too, right, the sports and the players' name, image, and likeness, right? Like we were talking about, like let's talk about like LSU, right? Is again, let's say they got that. There's reason they got statues outside of Shaq, or again, you got your Livy Dunns now, your Paul Skeens, your all of these things in more recent history. But obviously, and then like Bama's slogan is. Where legends are made, right? Because again, you have your Nick Sabans, you have some of the top NFL players have obviously come out of Bama over the years and all those things as well, like some of those things as well. And, again, you are using their name, image, and likeness to build your brand. And as a business guy, I understand like with that, like you are using what these players are bringing to the table, and they are superstars that, they're selling jerseys with their numbers, they're filling up seats, they're, selling merchandise, they're doing all these other things. So again, and also too, like they're coming to watch these players play. Yeah. So the fact that you're giving them, again, like we talked about that, like a scholarship to your school, and you're like, oh, that should be enough. That should be X, Y, and Z. It's like okay, I know you guys might be jealous of like the kids making money or doing whatever, but it's like okay, but you understand what you're doing is you're actually protecting the institution, and the institution is making hands over fists, which is obviously from a legal side, is they've been losing court cases after court cases after court cases. That the legality behind this, right, too, is just like, again, it's they should have free market value to figure out what is my value based on what the market is willing to pay me for me to do this, right? And obviously we've seen that already as it's opened up. Everybody's like, oh man, it's like Wild Wild West. It's like, well, this is also backlog of years and years of players being able to, create their own brands and social media contracts and all the things. And the schools knew that these were big time players and that they put, butts in seats. But at the end of the day, like that's why they're at the schools in the first place. And like superstars, like that's what they do, right? And then also they build up the brand of the school, which then goes on to make money off of that player for years and years after they've already been there, just because they start to build a reputation for where that, those players, like look at all these players that played at LSU or played at Alabama, that played at, X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever school you want to fill in the blank with, right? Florida or whatever, right? Those are big brands that are built off of, players, and they should, and for my opinion, like again, the market should tell them like what they're worth. And it has become big business where I know people they want to keep it as, all this amateur, status with it. But at the same time, like these players, these are, again, if you can become a celebrity at 10 years old, right? Well, then why can't this guy be a celebrity in college when he's one of the best athletes in the world and all those things? And also too, how many guys go to the next level, professional level, and then struggle and never make any money and never do X, Y, and Z? It's like,
I just think it's also too, it's like the goal of it is to like try to even the opportunity for everybody to earn, where, this is not a secret that people have been getting paid forever, just behind closed doors, in different ways.
Deferred contracts or whatever.
Like, the whole Reggie Bush thing for USC. It's like, well, they got a house for him and his mom and like moved him out there, and like he didn't have to worry about any of that. I'm sure he made some money too. I just know about the house part. And it's like, people have been getting paid for a long time, but there's certain people where that wasn't, maybe they weren't the superstar like Reggie Bush was, right? And so that opportunity wasn't quite there, or, again, it's not worth the risk for that person to, take that opportunity, where now, again, like you were saying, like there are a few that are making millions of dollars, right? But what it does is it opens
but the percentage wise is,
it's very, very few, right? But it gives opportunity where, like the shortstop at insert whatever school that has a local brand, because all the guys or girls in that particular sport that watches that school, they can go do a camp and make a few $100 on a weekend or $1,000 a month or whatever, which to most college kid, that's life-changing money, $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. Like that does a lot, for them if they're getting scholarship money, and that can pay for extra meals or even a travel back home. Like, there were kids that I played in college with that just never went home because they couldn't afford
Yeah,
the
yeah.
gas
It's
money
hard.
to go home.
It was hard for me to go
you
back
know,
and forth.
when they got there, they were there all year and they never went back. You know, it's like, so
Yeah.
$1,000 a month for that kid is life changing. They can go
Yeah.
back over Christmas break. And,
For sure.
You know, and
Well,
so
and
I
then
just think it
and
opens
then
that
there's
up.
the professional side of it, right? Which is, well, it's like, okay, if I am a superstar at your university, I'm doing press conferences. I'm held underneath different scrutiny.
Right.
I'm held underneath all these other things. I'm having to do all these things. You're having me go to, all these photo shoots. You're having me, all these I'm interviewing on ESPN. I'm doing all these other things for the school, right? But if that was anybody else, if that was for ESPN or if that was for, any other job that's outside of college, right? Like, you would have to be paying these people, and also too, the best ones that bring in the most amount of money would be getting paid the most money.
Yeah.
Right? The market would pay them more money. So the fact there, which again, I think there's like this old guard that's held to like wanting it to be how it always has been, or jealous of the opportunity, or all those other things. It's like, hey, this is a business like any other. And again, there is kids out there that are really young, that are really famous, that are, there's singers that are 50 plus years old, and there's singers that are 12 years old, and again, young Michael was making a lot of money. And I think also on the other side of that, it's like, it's crazy to be one of the number one athletes, one of the most recognized celebrities in the world, and all these other things. If he was just outside the NCAA, he'd be able to make all this money and his family would be taken care of. But now you're saying, oh no, he's in college, his mom and his family, he comes from a very tough upbringing. She's still living in the hood. She's still struggling. They're struggling to eat, and you're one of the biggest superstars in the world. Meanwhile, they can't pay you money.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make sense in that same well. It's like, if he's gotten that big and that famous and he's done the work of building his own brand and doing all this other stuff. But again, we're still talking about a fraction within a fraction. We're talking about less than like 0.5% of athletes, right?
Yeah.
And then also it's crazy from the other side of that again, like someone like me, if I want to go to college and I'm trying to work my way through college, where again, you know what, I'm not as talented. I'm not that guy that's in the 0.5%. I'm not all those other things. And I need to go get a job just like a normal college student could do to work their way through college. And that's also the disadvantage as well. It's like, again, just because you go and play college sports doesn't mean that all your schooling's paid for. There's a lot of athletes, especially in baseball, where we have limited scholarship, opportunities, where in a lot of the female sports, they have smaller roster sizes. They can also, because of the sport, they can hold less athletes and still be like, for example, softball. You don't need half your team to be pitchers.
Right.
In baseball, you couldn't operate. They're going to even struggle right now when they're cutting down the roster sizes because, again, overhand throwing and all these other things is very different from throwing from a mound. Again, there's a reason why they need so much recovery time, all these other things. And so now because of the sport, they're required to have even if they have the same amount of, from a female to male, let's say you have the same, Title IX, again, it matters how they spread it across different sports. But even if we have the exact same, let's say from softball to baseball, exact same amount of scholarships, the roster sizes are way different, right? And then everything gets thrown off from football because obviously on the same side of that, those are all male scholarships. So then they have all these other female sports that either get overloaded, or again, you go a male basketball, male softball, female basketball, and you do those roster sizes are very similar because they're different sports.
Yeah.
So baseball usually gets the short end of the stick there. And so there's a lot of athletes where, again, even when you look at like Chris Bryant and some of those guys, when they were back in college, they were only like 30% scholarships.
Yeah.
Now, again, you also have academics on top of that, on all these other things, and certain guys can qualify for different stuff, government assistance, all that other stuff. But my point is there's going to be a lot of players like me who, again, my first year had no scholarship, right? And I'm paying that straight out of pocket. I'm out of state, and because that's the only schools that offered me. No one here locally in our state. We only have 2 colleges anyways. No one here, and they were, I wasn't ready for a 4-year, and the CSN here locally was too good for me. I wasn't that good, So I had to get out of state just so I could go play, right? Reno's another university. I wasn't good enough to play at Reno. So if I wanted to play college baseball, I needed to go out of the state, right? So now you get out of state tuition, and now again, you're on no scholarship. Right, especially if you go to a JUCO in California, which is very common for someone in Vegas to do, is either go Arizona or you go to California. Well, California out-of-state tuition isn't cheap, and then 2 on top of that as well, cost of living in California is higher. I was in a smaller town, so it wasn't as bad. But my point is anybody else that goes to that college can work their way through college, make money, and help pay for their tuition in real time, right? But instead, us, one, we don't have a lot of time anyways to have a job, and then also, too, good luck telling your boss that your schedule that it's, and then also the schedules have gotten even more crazy. If you do go to those major universities, your schedules are insane, where you're waking up at the gym at 5 a.m., working out, immediately going, you got 30 minutes, take a shower, whatever, get to class, hammering out your class, and then also too, you're leaving with 2 days out of the week, or like you're leaving on Wednesday or Thursday because you're in the Big Ten, and now you have to fly across the country, and then on top of that too, you got all your extra practices, all your games. Then also too, if you're at a big university, you're signing autographs for another 30 hour after your practice or game, or depending on the event. And then also too, they have things that you're doing for the university with your NIL money, or doing it your X, Y, and Z before they were doing it beforehand, where they're making you sign softballs, they're making you sign all this other stuff.
Yeah.
They're making you do appearances at the Canes because the school's got a thing with them.
Yeah.
At the restaurant around the corner, we have a big, it's public relations. All the people show up and you're doing an event because it's fundraising for the school. They're getting the players to do all those things, and these players are getting home at 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night. And it's like, and then now you're also telling me I can't make any money on my social media, or I can't make any money on these other ways where I can, find ways to make money, especially when, even at these big schools, my teammate might be making millions of dollars, but I might be making nothing. I might not even have a full scholarship.
Yeah.
And so you're holding me to the same standard as him, when he's making millions of dollars or X, Y, and Z, and he's not allowed to do these things, but it's like, I'm just trying to work at this pizza shop down the street, So I think that's also, a hard thing where it's like, even if I could get certain work where it's like, we could only do, I remember when I got to the NAIA, like my last year, I got to do like little side stuff that the school had set up where it was like, I literally was like packing envelopes, cleaning the uniforms, just trying to get, some extra cash, doing other things. And that's when I was outside the NCAA, so it was also different stuff. But it's just like, again, like that, all that stuff is crazy when you keep in consideration. It's like, that was only happening inside the NCAA because they were trying to limit these players from being able to make money, which is, first off, from the get-go, like, why? Again, there's kids that are 12 years old that are celebrities.
Yeah.
Why can't this guy, he plays for Alabama and does other things, why can they only get the benefit out of it and the player doesn't, right? This might be the height of this might be the most amount of money they could ever make in their whole life.
Yeah.
Right? And it sets them on to go make a business afterwards or to start something up or whatever,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. Like, there's just certain seasons of your life, like, just to use and stay with athletes. Like, if an athlete's in their prime, let's say an MLB, and they're 25 to 27, and they've just come off, like, 3 MVP caliber seasons, like, that's their highest earning potential period of their career.
Yeah.
But let's go fast forward 10 years from then, let's say they're 35. Well, they're not at the highest earning potential part of their career. They're at a part of their career where, maybe the decision they made was to go make money for 10 years and play on whatever team would pay them the most. But now that they're 35, they're going to go take the veteran minimum at whatever team and go try to win a World Series because they've already made their money, right? And then you got some people, it also just depends on what you value, right? Some people will take less money to live in Tampa Bay versus taking more money to live in Kansas City because they're on the beach in Tampa Bay and they want to live in Tampa Bay, and that's what, it gives them the freedom.
If I do, I could go to California, but the taxes are higher, so I'll take less money and play for Texas, or whatever, and again, they have the ability to be able to pick, and choose like what's best for them and their family. And then, I also think, like you said, from that part, right, of the perspective of I can take into consideration of what's best for my family, right? Like I asked this the other day when we were talking about with certain players, I was talking about like with people, right? Someone's like, you shouldn't compare athletes to like, adults making decisions for their family. It's like, well, why? Like if in the same sense of this too, if you got offered, if you had to go take a job at another state across the country because it was the best offer you had at the moment and it was how you were going to move up in your job, and you went there and you took the job and you put in your time, and then 2 years from now there's a job offering in your hometown, it's more money, it's next to your family, it's a better situation for you to move up, you move through all your ranks over there, this is now the best opportunity for you to move up through levels. would you not take that job?
Yeah.
And it's like, and now we're over here hammering the kid because he makes that same decision.
Yeah.
And like, oh, he has no loyalty. He doesn't respect. He's entitled. All these other things. Like, what are you talking about? Like, again, like, are you entitled because you took another job at a different company? Like, you have no loyalty and all these. It's like, bro, he's making the same decisions that you're making as an adult. And then you're hammering this kid about that. Like he's doing a terrible move. And then meanwhile, the coach, obviously we just, that happened last year with, what's his name over at Texas. But it's just like, don't you ever bring all these things up. I poured my heart into this program, blah, 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 blah. And the next day he signed with Texas. It's just like, okay, bro. It's just like, at the end of the day, like, again, I'm not upset you left. You made a good decision for your family. Yeah. It's one of the highest, it's one of the best job in Texas that you can have, right? And again, at the end of the day, you're doing what's best for, you and your family with the best offer and the money that they offered you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think more than anything with the NIL, like my opinion on it is more, it's just trying to give everyone as equal or as fair of an opportunity to make some type of money. And like you said earlier, like, if Mike Trout goes and, competes for the MVP 5 years in a row, you're going to tell him that he has to make the least amount on his team? Like, no.
Yeah.
He's going to get a bigger contract, right?
Yeah.
And if the team wants to pay him that, they're going to there's probably teams that looked at him and were like, we're not going to pay him that because we don't project you to keep doing what you're doing for 5 years, or you did get injured or whatever, right? Like, there's going to be decisions that are going to be made from the business side from those schools as well as the players. So again, like, there's going to be some players that do transfer and go take more money, but, it is what it is. Like, the way I say it, it's just trying to give as even or equal of a playing field for everybody to earn as possible.
Yeah.
Where, again, also, like I mentioned earlier, it's being more transparent also, which is another big step.
And I think the accountability side too, it's also accountability for coaches, right? Where, yeah, you know what? This player could leave. And also, just like at work, right? There's accountability with your boss. It's like, yo, if this guy's not happy here, he could leave. It's a free market.
Yeah.
He could leave and go work for somebody else. He can leave and go X, Y, and Z. So like, yeah, like there is a need for a higher level of communication. There is a need for how monitoring how you're speaking to each other and how what your culture is like, and like all these other things too. And then also on the other end of that is just like, understanding that too as well. It's like, well, it's coming about them and all those other things. Like, okay, well, guess what? In our workspaces too, like, okay, it's the same thing. Like anybody could go grab another job, or they can go do other things, right? But at the same time, like, again, that's more the real world. You guys were holding them captive.
Yeah.
Where, for example, like, dude, some of these guys, they could go to another school, or they could do, go take another opportunity where it's like, again, and then they're like, again, and their year-to-year contracts when it comes to their scholarships, where you could pull their scholarships at any time. Again, you could leave these guys. And then if they go to transfer, you could not sign them to leave because it's a competitive balance. Yeah. Competitive for you, for them not to play against you, right? Because that guy's good or whatever. So it's like, I think in that ways, it's more level field. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand for coaches, they hate it because they're recruiting like all the time. These people could, decommit, that things could change. You think you have somebody locked in. I understand that it's difficult, but at the same time, it's not an option. And obviously from the legal side and from courts, they've already decided that it's not an option that the kids have to take the brunt of that, which is, well, I'm not going to take care of my name, image, and likeness. Again, if the school needs to hire more coaches, or if the school needs to figure out what they need to do, believe me, if you want me to feel bad for the $40 billion company, or whatever the hell these guys are now making at some of these massive universities, instead of, again, I'm not saying that the coaches, there isn't real restrictions there or what's put on them, but the same exact thing. It's like, that's also not the player's fault either, right? So at the end of the day, if they should hire more coaches for recruiting, or if they need to hire, more things, or they need to regulate recruiting times more, or X, Y, and Z, well then maybe that's something that needs to be brought up and talked about.
Right.
But at the end of the day, because again, maybe you are putting too much on the coaches, just like you're putting too much on the players. Maybe you are requiring them to work too much. You're making them put too many hours in, and maybe they should just have someone like in MLB, right? There's a scouting department, and their job is to go find talent. They are not also the hitting coach in the big leagues.
Right.
Right? So at the end of the day, maybe they do need to diversify that and have more assets available and tools for that recruiting process. And that's what it looks like, because it turns more into a professional sport. Because again, the other thing that obviously got raised recently, like we were talking about in that court case, is, okay, now it's branching into this other idea. Well, if I'm a student at the university, how can you tell me when I'm no longer allowed to play at this university, in the sense of, like, from a regulatory body, NCAA, over the university? How can you tell me you're limiting my earning potential?
Yeah.
Where, again, I am a student at the university, and you're giving me a 6-year clock or doing whatever, and let's say I got hurt 2-3 years, right? And well, that ate up, of my 6, right? And so some of these people, or again, I transferred, this happened, I was ineligible because of this, blah, 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 all the things, right? I lost a year on my clock, right? I understood that's why I transferred into the NCAA. When I had some transfer issues, when I went from my 3-year at JUCO into there, because there's different, restrictions, and then also your transfer in schools and what credits they take and which ones they don't, and what comes into the program and the major that you want to have, and all these things. And then also too, on the other side of that too as well, like we talked about, is it gets to that point, and I guess we probably should move off that for a second, is just like, what do you feel about that? Do you feel, because it's a new thing, it's something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, is, do you think the clock should be a thing?
Yeah, well, I do think, going kind of back for a second, is I do think it would be an interesting idea of having like the contracts for X amount of years for athletes. Like, hey, I did sign a 2-year contract for my scholarship and for this NIL. That way, it's not year to year and holding these players, like, to give the coaches some type of roadmap, right? Where it's not just everybody's the wild, wild west every year. I think that's an interesting thought to throw out there. Like, you could sign a 1-year contract or a 4. If you want to lock it up for 4, like you're seeing this in the MLB right now. You have so many athletes that want 10-year contracts because they're like, at any given point, I could tear my ACL and be gone for 3 years, UCL for a year.
Then you got guys. Then you got guys like Bauer though that are like, I'm betting on me.
Yeah,
and I know if I go and dominate and get an MVP this year, the next year when they go to sign me, I could really collect all that money.
I don't know if you knew this, but Pete Crow Armstrong taken MLB by storm this year so far. Well, he turned down like a 4-year, $90 million contract to start the year, and everybody was like, "What are you doing? Like, you didn't even play that good last year." And it's like, sure, he's glad he turned that down to start the year, because statistically what he's doing, he's going to be able to ask for some money after this year, right?
Betting on himself,
and, and again, he put his marbles into his basket, and he's like, I'm going to go perform. I believe in myself. And if he doesn't, that's a risk he took. That's his career, right? So I think that idea is interesting. The clock, the only thing that, there's going to have to be other solutions to that, because, I already felt this way. Even when I played, I was 23 my senior year, and we had a freshman that was 17. I'm just like, even if you're the best 17-year-old, like, I'm just 23. Like, I'm just so much more physically more mature. I've lived away from home for 5 years now. You don't even know how to go get your own meal from the grocery store. Like, there's so many things you still got to figure out about this whole like college thing that, and don't get me wrong, there's some 17-year-olds that would kick the crap out of 28-year-olds. Like, they're good, but as a whole, the age is it's very
it's a big
tough,
deal
like,
at that time, especially for males.
And to expect a 17-year-old freshman to come in and compete against a 25-year-old is a little ridiculous. On average, most 25-year-olds are going to probably dominate that battle as a whole. So I mean, there definitely need to be other solutions. Like, you can choose when you start your NCAA clock. Like, you can go play in a independent league for 3 years if you want to and start at 22, or there just needs to be an age cutoff or whatever. It's hard. I don't know what that solution would be, but there'd have to be other solutions or other leagues and stuff like that.
And I think that's the hard part, is like, now you're getting to a point of the legality standpoint, right? Like, what regulatory things could I put in place as a governing body? For example, in the MLB, they don't have it where it's like, oh, when you're 48, you got to go.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they're willing to sign you, you can play.
Yeah.
If somebody's willing to pay you money, whatever that means. I mean, you see this all the time with, like, just older athletes. Like, sometimes they don't even really play that much, but they know that their brand, their name, they grew up in the area, they're a good mentor to some of the younger players, and they'll sign them. But they're not really even playing.
Well, and I get the clock standpoint too, because the other thing is it really hurts, and it's already hurting right now because of the portal, is high school kids, right? Because if I'm Alabama, if I'm LSU, all these other things, right? Florida, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, right? X, Y, and Z. Why would I take a 17-year-old that needs to get developed when I can wait for them to be developed, see if they pan out, and then bring them on? So I got a team full of juniors and seniors, these older kids that have developed. They have their other skills in there, right, that they've developed. They're tested at that level. Why would, why would I do that, right? Betty's over here just getting a snoring, straight snoozing. But why would I do that, right? Why wouldn't I just have a team full of juniors and seniors? And you've already seen that a lot of kids get decommitted and get told. And then also too, like we didn't talk about this earlier, but with some of the portal stuff, right? It's like, again, more than people know, a lot of people are just getting their scholarships pulled, right? Where they're like, hey, they know, the coach knows, and if you're coaching at the highest level, you're put in a tough spot, because if you have a player that's underperforming in the sense of comparatively to what's on the free agent market, they're like MLB teams where they're going, well, we can get rid of this guy and bring this guy in, and it'd be better for our team, and we'd be a better team.
Yeah.
So now they're having to do that, and it's going up behind closed doors, and they're just going, oh, all these guys are in the portal. And it's like, dude, there's a lot of these coaches that are like, I just out recruited 10 of you guys. I'm good if all 10, all 10 of you go ahead and jump in the portal. You know what I'm saying? So there's also, that in there as well.
Yeah. I also think it would be interesting too. It's, if they were separate entities, you could have some type of affiliation of the sport team in the college. So like the brand of the college, like LSU would have a team, but you could also, just like a student, you can go to school at LSU if you want and just take classes, but then play in an independent league, not for LSU's baseball team, and still go play. Like maybe you want to go to school to LSU, but you play for LSU Shreveport or whatever. I don't know. Like, I don't even think they're that close, but I think that would be interesting too. And then the sporting team would operate as a separate entity, and they would have to figure out how to make money, which I think would be interesting, kind of like what we were talking about a little bit with like Banana Ball. It's like, well, you'd have to bring people that their job was to build the business of the baseball team or the softball team.
Or unintentionally, like we talked about, it might make a new pro league, which is those major universities where the SEC, like we talked about, might branch off and does their own thing, because maybe they do have the ability to have their own pro league that's a subsidiary of, before MLB, or like a branch off like a G League type thing, where these guys are younger, they're up and coming, X, Y, and Z, and all these high schoolers need to go play somewhere, and there's not opportunities at those schools right now, and they are taking the best players that are available, that haven't been drafted, that are going to school at the university, that or whatever, right? So at the end of the day, I think that's something that will kind of iron itself out of what that looks like, because at the end of the day, like I said, it is like a business. If that guy is available and he's not getting drafted in X, Y, and Z, and it best fits him not to go get drafted and be in the minor league system, not make any money doing all these other things, and it would be better for me just to stay at LSU rather than, again, like I said, get a lower signing bonus and then fight for the next 4 or 5 years until I get to the big leagues.
Yeah.
Because that's something different in baseball that's not the same in other sports, where it's like, let's say it's football or whatever, where, you might sit a year, or you might not sit at all, and the next season you're starting, on the NFL team. Baseball, it's like, for the next 4 or 5 years, I'm typically sitting in the minor leagues. So I'm not, again, I'm getting a fraction of what I might be making if I was just still playing at LSU.
Yeah.
So, obviously, again, like most people don't pay attention to minor league baseball.
No.
Nowhere near, obviously, comparatively to like, an LSU game or something like that.
They've done a better job putting it on like MLB TV and stuff for people to see, but it's still like nobody's going on MLB TV to go, okay, at 4 o'clock the AAA team plays, but. Also too, it's interesting because like I know some guys that like I played against in college that, I mean, they even graduated, or not necessarily graduated, but left college early to go play professionally overseas so they could make some money. Like I know a couple guys, they went over and were making 6 figures to play in Australia, And they're like, well, I could play one more year in college. Also, like you mentioned, very, very like limited funding. So I'm paying to go to school, going into debt for an opportunity to get drafted by a pro team, to play in the minor leagues, of which I'm not going to make any money. I'm going to live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 guys for the small sliver of hope that I could make it to the big leagues one day. And he's like, I'm going to go play in Australia. I'm going to go make $100,000. I'm going to play for 4 years. And if that's where it ends, that's where it ends. If not, I just played professionally for 4 years, and I'll end up in the minor leagues anyways, and maybe hopefully can push through it a little quicker because I am older, I am more mature, and it's like you said, almost making like a separate pro league out of it, and that's what it turns into, where they have opportunities to still play and make money and not be limited. Again, too, like a lot of them, this is the biggest their brand will ever be.
Yeah.
And so this gives them a legitimate opportunity to, let's just not even say make money, but build a brand worth building a business off of. It's like, because of the brand that you built, maybe you didn't even make a ton of money in college.
And then the guys that are hating on the other side of that, right? It's like someone is making money off of them. So either they're capitalizing off of their own marketing and their own likeness, or somebody else is profiting off of their likeness, which usually is the institution, right?
Right.
Where they're making all that money on the other side of that, right? So, I mean, like I said, it's not like this money isn't being made either way. It's like it's being made, right? It's just like, again, the school's contract. Why do you think the school's contract with Gatorade or Nike or whatever is so massive? Because they want the top athletes in the world to be wearing their stuff.
Yeah. 100%.
So someone's getting the money from all of it, right? So it's like, it's for you to tell the athlete that they shouldn't be getting that, right? And that's why they're, all those things are coming out about some of the profit share and some of those other things, right, that they're doing. So we'll see.
And that's becoming a bigger conversation, is the profit share too, where it's like, what the school makes, they have to divvy
or the
out
TV
to the players,
contracts
or
are huge.
also what the player makes, like there has to be, some type of, contract in place to make sure that the money's getting distributed properly, whatever properly means to them. I don't know exactly like the wording in the contracts, rather than, again, the institution just collecting, and then the players get nothing, right?
Yeah.
Especially too, like, like you said, there's some players that'll make a decision based on the gear. Like, I want to play for a Jordan school. I want to play for an Under Armour school, for an Adidas school, right? Like, they like the equipment, they like the jerseys, they like what it looks like, right? On the flip side too, the player could also build that brand. Like, there's a reason that Jordan wants to be a part of Duke basketball. It's like, you have elite basketball players. Like, they want to be associated with elite basketball players.
Yep.
That's the Jordan brand. Or North Carolina, or like Michigan, right? They want to be. The Jordan's not going and sponsoring,
College of the Siskiyous.
Yeah, Siskiyous, or whatever, right? It's like stuff like that. And again, they want to be associated.
Yeah,
with
we
the
paid
elite
for our
side,
jerseys straight
right?
up. Yeah, 100%.
So, no, I mean, the players at my JUCO did too. We gave our coach $250 for our 2 shirts that we called jerseys. So, but, again, it was just, they want to be associated with it too. So they're paying as well, and they want to be affiliated with those athletes just as much as the athletes want to be affiliated with them too. So, I mean, the profit sharing thing is going to be interesting how it exactly comes out as well, because I think the idea is good too, but it'll be interesting to see how it gets twisted. Somebody's going to twist it somehow, some way to their benefit. It's like, where the players are making a ton of money, but then that has to get distributed back to the school, when it's like, all right, well, the players are one going doing the press conferences and tweeting and, this and that, and blah, 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 blah. But, one of the questions that actually got brought up to me about this, and I'll be curious your thoughts, is like, a lot of people like college sports better, they say, because they feel the players still play for the love of the game and not because it's their job. They're not trying to make money from it, and they're worried that the NIL stuff is going to take the passion, the love for the game away, and it's going to be more about how much money can I make. Yeah. And
Well, I would say that that's already happening. They're playing so that they get paid. They're just deferring the payment.
Yeah.
They're like, they're playing so they can land a pro contract, and they get paid in the signing bonus.
Right.
So, like, at the end of the day, like, with it, and also too, from the legality standpoint, it's not, I think that when people get to that spot, right, like, well, how I would like my college, okay, but so they take all the financial hits so that you can feel better about watching them play. Mm-hmm. If you don't like watching them play, turn off the TV.
Yeah, don't watch them.
You're not going to, though.
Yeah.
You're still going to watch. So at the end of the day, someone's been profiting off of you watching them play. Mm-hmm. And again, from a legal standpoint, you can't dictate that that's like me saying, well, I like going to McDonald's because I like that they don't pay their employees and they're just gritty. It's just like, what? It's just like, bro, you're benefiting from the service. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's not about, like that's not fair, right? Yeah. So it's like, I think that's also the other part, right? It's just like, understanding from that piece is just being like, look, at the end of the day, like, it's big business. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to pay to watch those people play, it don't matter if they're, we pay money just to watch the 12-year-olds at the Big League Dreams. Yeah. So I have to pay money to watch them play. Mm-hmm. And again, on the other end of that, right, where it's like, again, these big tournaments or these other things, right, like there's a reason why, and big brands want to be associated with even those players at those ages, mm-hmm. right, where, they'll give a whole team bats, right, just so that they could say that the best teams are swinging their bats or whatever. Yeah. There's money to be made from their name, image, and likeness, even at all those different stages.
Yeah, and that's where, like, for me, when that question got brought up, initially my first thought was actually, well, a lot of times I feel like people like college sports better because it feels more attainable, right? It's easier for me to go play college ball than it is for me to go play pro ball, right? And there's people making mistakes in college ball that you don't see pros make sometimes because they're college athletes, they're younger, they're a little less mature, right? Whatever it is. And so I can relate to them a little more. They're closer to my age or whatever. Like, I feel like it's a little bit more relatable for a lot of people. And or too, like, I had my neighbor's son went and played at, UNLV. So it feels like there's some type of connection, but very few people can be like, oh yeah, my cousin played for the Raiders, it's just a much smaller crowd. So it feels more relatable, but also too, no different than, there's some people, I was just thinking about this while you were talking, was, the golf league, the LIV golf league versus, the PGA. I personally, I'm going to get backlash. I personally like watching the LIV golf on TV more than I like watching PGA. They play music, it's faster pace. Like, the commentary to me is more entertaining, which they're trying to appeal to a different crowd, but that's the whole point. You're appealing to a different crowd. So like college sports, it appeals to a different crowd. There's some people that don't like college sports as much. Some people like pro sports more because of, the elite stat. Like, again, you go to a Dodgers game, it's entertainment all around. You go to a Lakers game, there's entertainment. You're watching, LeBron and Luka. Like,
look,
there
there's
are
not,
superstars.
there's not TV deals for College of the Siskiyous.
Yeah, no, I mean,
because like at the end of the day, right? It's they want to see the best players play, and they still happen to have these. That's why TV deals are set up. That's why you can watch every SEC game. That's why you can watch every SEC game, and on ESPN and how everything's set up that way. It's like they have the TV contracts that are set up. So, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, when it comes into those other things, it's like, again, I think it gets more away from like people's emotions, and they start talking about, well, this is why I watch. But it's like, yeah, but again, you don't get to exploit somebody for free labor because it entertains you. Like, it's just that's not how that works, right? It's just like, so at the end of the day, like, again, from the legality standpoint, it's just not legal, So again, and at the end of the day, I think people are going to watch either way. I think it's just the landscape changed, and again, also too, back in the day, there wasn't TV contracts. There wasn't all that money that was being spent. That wasn't even a business, streaming and all that those other things. Now it is. It is a lot of money that is going. And again, like, they are using the player's name, image, and likeness to make money for the school and the university. And again, if you're telling me that kid's mom and all X, Y, and Z, and even if they're like, well, I agree they should get a certain amount of money, but it should be capped and all X, Y, and Z, it's just like, again, like, you're capping like their free market value, and like, even in the NFL, let's say you can cap what the school could pay you. how can you cap what I can make outside the university?
Yeah, no, they
It's
don't
just-
do that. I mean, there's brand deals. Like,
Yeah.
again, LeBron has a shoe deal.
Yes.
He does a deal with, he made a
100%.
movie.
100%.
You know, and then also, too, you have to also have that conversation, and you understand when you sign LeBron,
Yeah.
he's going to do commercials.
Yeah.
You know, and that's his job to manage it. And
Yeah.
as his employer, if he doesn't respect the agreement that you guys had, well, then you can have a conversation to stand on and can terminate contract and do some of these things. But, you know, you also take that risk. Like, somebody comes to LA, right, to play for the Lakers, you know, the odds are
Yeah.
they're going to be in commercials. They're
Yeah.
going to go to events. They're going to go to other games.
That's their
Like,
agent's job.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And like that's part of why they're in LA is to
Yeah.
make money, right?
Yeah.
That's why like they were talking about LeBron because he's coming to the end of his career. They're like, it'd be cool to see him go back to Cleveland because that's where he started. And it's like, well, he moved to LA because he's such a superstar. Like he can't go out in public anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like LA, he's just another star. And it's just like, oh yeah, it's LeBron. But like that's
Yeah.
also Kim Kardashian, and that's also you
Yeah.
know.
What's up with the
George Clooney.
Kardashians today?
You
You
know,
guys,
I
you
don't
guys
know.
are both just
I don't
Kardashian
know.
lovers, huh?
And so again, it's just like it's LeBron, but he's also like in the same restaurant as a bunch of other stars. So it's less of like a shock. His family can be normal around all of those other abnormal people, right? And so it's like it's why he went to LA, right? And so, you know, I definitely think, you know, when you make those decisions and you take that money, it does come with responsibility, but that's also your job to meet the requirements of the contract that you're agreeing to and the performance. And if you don't meet that, then next year they can move on. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think they just have to, it's got to open it up and things will settle where they settle. But I do think from the other side of that, right, is like, you know, name, image, and likeness. And you're, again, you know, you're using, they're coming to watch and they're buying jerseys and all those other things. Like they obviously do have a brand. So restricting that's going to be tough. But yeah, let me pray us out.
Yeah.
You know, dear Father God, thanks so much for just continue to show up in our life over and over again, God, and just you know, just open us to just different perspectives and how you're moving and what you're doing. And we just ask you to continue to do that, and you just support everybody through this issue, and you open other people's eyes to other people's perspectives, and support the players and the coaches, and you know, and the right changes to get guided there by you, God. And we just ask all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, until next time, Farm System out.